So, welcome to Powerless Penguins United, Big Book Study. This week I'm pleased to introduce Mags, who's kindly come along to share about the big book. Over to you, Mags.
Thank you so much, Laws, for your service, and to everybody in the background. My name is Mags, I'm an alcoholic, and it's great to see everybody. We've got a lot to get through this morning, so I'm going to get stuck right in. One of the things that jumped out to me when Jim was reading the preamble, when you set aside every single thing you think you know to have this new experience with God, because I do it every single time I come into a meeting, and I've not really tuned into the line from the preamble before where it says, do these people have a solution that can help me stay sober? There you go. So if you're new about what we're going to give to you is the I hope and trust, like it says in a vision for you, the atmosphere was electric. The smiles on the people's faces, the look in their eyes. Here was a haven at last. Do these people in this room have a solution that can help you stay sober? Because if you're sitting in a room and you're thinking, all they're talking about is the drinking and the using and I'm not hearing any solution, then don't do what I did. I sat in the rooms for a long time and didn't hear a solution. I place no judgment or opinion on those people in those rooms, but they hadn't been given what I now have been given, which is a program of action, a program of recovery, a 12-step program, which is outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, the only place you'll find the program of recovery. And as a result of following the clear-cut directions set out in there, I have had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, which has removed the addictions, which has solved all my problems. So do you think there's people in these rooms that can help you stay sober? Yes, there are people in this room. And even if you're listening to the recording, then come back to the Penguins. 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, these people have a solution. The atmosphere in this room is electric. And these people work every single day, and I see it in the background as well, every single day to help each other get to this solution, to be able to have a program of full-blown recovery, not just relief from the addiction. About 2.5 years this group has been going on for now, and the commitment and the dedication in the background is phenomenal. And I'm so grateful to be able to be asked to be of service every single Saturday. Because when I came into the rooms, it wasn't like that first. And the aggregate of all of those yeses, saying yes to service, saying yes to going to a meeting, saying yes to getting a sponsor, saying yes to doing the steps, saying yes, added up to something that is totally and utterly phenomenal, that I don't actually have the words to articulate and to describe how much my life has changed. All because somebody knew what to do with this Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. So if you're not doing it, what are you doing? Just sit with that for a little while. Don't sit with it too long. Because if you're not doing this, then really? Anyway, I'll leave it with you. Just sit with it for a while. We're on page 40. And we're just a tiny little recap. We're in coming towards the end of more about alcoholism. We're right into the heart of the mental obsession, which starts on page 23, which ends on page 43. Then I'm hoping that next week we'll go into the second half of the first step, which is in the unmanageability of our life, which we cover on page 44 and 45. We'll see how we go with this discussion as we go through the pages. I'm not necessarily going to rush through this. Whatever comes to mind is going to come to mind and be given to me. We've covered already 3 of the stories within this chapter. The guy with the carpet slippers who drank after 25 years. That's demonstrating the fact that no matter how long you can stay away for drugs or alcohol by yourself, it will return if you haven't got a program and haven't had a spiritual awakening as a result of the steps. So we then went on to Jim, the milkman, I call him. He's the guy that makes the whiskey with milk. That's a mouthful, isn't it? And he only did the first 11 steps, what my friend would call an 11-step self-help program, and not a 12-step recovery program. Just before the meeting, I heard a couple of people talk about the fact that they're loving their step 10 and 11 practice, loving it, and that they are reading all sorts of books, which is exactly what the program teaches us to do. Step 10 and 11 is not a self-help program. It's not about making us feel better. It's about making us more effective in 12. So what we live in 10 and learn in 11, we have to bring to 12 to practice these principles in all of our affairs and help us grow in spiritual growth, in our spiritual way of living. Because we must remember that in order to, like Jim didn't do, what we need to remember that is intensive work, whereas one alcoholic with another, is where we enlarge our spiritual life. Step 12, 10 and 11 are the facilitations to enable us to do that to the best of our ability and for us to grow in our spiritual way of living. We then went on to the jaywalker. I love that story. You know, that the preoccupation with this unreasonable idea, that mental obsession that it's okay to pick up the first drink or to use it on one occasion. No, that's not what it's about. The jaywalker doing the same thing again and again and again and again. Doesn't work. And then we moved into Fred. Lovely Fred. He's in big time trouble, this story. Big time trouble. Because he won't admit he's powerless over alcohol or whatever his addiction is or whatever he's using. He won't admit that. Step 1, he won't let the idea in that he's powerless and his life is unmanageable. Then he won't accept the spiritual help. Big time trouble. And as a result of that, his story is a little bit more extensive because it goes through all of the rigmaroles that he tried to do on self-knowledge to try to fix his problem. We've covered that up to last week. We're on page 40. We're in the paragraph that begins, "We heard no more from Fred for a while." If you're sponsoring, get used to that. There's a lot of the times I hear no more from anybody for a while because they go back out on their self-knowledge and try to fix it themselves. You know what it is, Max? See everything that you've told me and all of the stuff that these people are talking about in the rooms? I've got this licked. Got this licked. I'm away on a trip to America. My boyfriend's come back. He's sending me flowers every week, buying me perfume every other week. We go for a meal every month. I don't drink whilst I'm out on the meal. My family are back in order. I've just got the promotion. I've got this licked. Okay, no worries. You've got my number. And I can guarantee, like it says in the previous pages, this person is probably thinking, I'm going to try and go this alone for a year. And within a matter of weeks, they're calling me and saying, you know what, Max, it's worse than ever before. And guess what? The flowers have stopped. There's no more perfume. I ain't going out for those meals. I'm off sick from work. Self-knowledge won't fix it. And this is what Fred's story goes on to say. So we heard no more of Fred for a while. One day we were told he was back in hospital. Who knew? There you go. Another trip to the hospital. This time he was quite shaky. Yeah. Jittery, as it talks about in the doctor's opinion. The only way that he's going to get rid of that jitteriness is to get that sense of ease and comfort by picking up the first string. That sense of it was never real. The never-ending cycle of that first string. Keep on picking up to get that sense of ease and comfort. He soon indicated he was anxious to see us. You see, because the time that he'd spoke to somebody from the fellowship before, they disturbed him about the drink problem. As a sponsor, when somebody new reaches out to me, it's my job, as it says, in working with others, to disturb someone about the drink question, not in a negative way, not in a bad way, but to give them some information about the physical allergy and the mental obsession where they become disturbed. So he was anxious to see them because he knew somewhere in his subconscious probably that what these guys had told him previously was happening to him. So think about that. As we go through the rest of this little chapter, think about this. Set aside every single thing you think you know to have this new experience with God. Is some of the stuff that is happening with Fred happening with you? The story he told is most instructive. Get this. I love this line. And the reason why I love this line was because this was me. For here was a chap absolutely convinced, moved by the evidence. The word convinced means moved by the evidence. He was absolutely convinced, moved by the evidence, that he had to stop drinking, who had no excuse for drinking, who exhibited splendid judgment and determination in all his other concerns, yet was flat on his back, nevertheless. That was me. Everything sorted in all my other concerns, yet here I was, not being able to stop this drinking and using thing. I can remember standing in the kitchen in the house that I lived in at the time. It was 9:30 in the morning. I was just about to get into the car to go to work. I poured the hugest glass of wine and I lifted it to my mouth and started to drink it. And my thoughts were saying to me, I do not want to do this. Yet I couldn't stop. I was drinking against my own willpower. I had the knowledge that this was not going to end well. And I drank. I do not want to do this. Yet paralleled with some sound reasoning, there was a trivial excuse, like it is outlined on page 37, that another drink was going to help me get through the day. No. Against my own will. At that point, I knew, I was convinced that something had to happen, but I didn't know how. I didn't know what was wrong with me. Nobody had explained to me about the allergy. Nobody had explained to me about the mental obsession. So let him tell you about it. He's going to tell us a little bit about his experience. I hear this all the time from sponsees, and I love them. I was much impressed with what you fellows said about alcoholism, and I frankly did not believe it would be possible for me to drink again. Okay, so everything that you're telling me in the rooms, everything that I'm absorbing, I'm a really intelligent person. We're all intelligent people sitting in this room, every single one of us. God gave us brains to use, like it says later on in the steps. We're all intelligent people. But there's some things that we just can't work out by ourselves. There's just some things where we need somebody else to help us. That being a sponsor who is armed with the facts about themselves. Armed with the facts about themselves as to how they recovered and had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. Not armed with the facts about themselves about what job they have and where they live and all of that. When my sponsees or potential sponsees try to interview me about what my life is, then no. You don't need to know whether I'm divorced and have 14 kids and live in a caravan in the south of France. You don't need to know. What you need to know is how I overcame drinking after 30 years of drinking every single day. Let's talk about that. I rather appreciated your ideas about the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink, because that's what the crux of the problem is, like it says early on in the chapter. The crux of the problem, the insanity. And that's a strong word, like it says when we read Jim's story. Strong word, but isn't it true? Because if we have this self-knowledge that tells me that picking up one drink is going to end up with the same thing happen again where I cannot stop, isn't it insane to pick up the first drink? But we're going on to learn something else here as we go through the rest of this story about this mental obsession, that we have no mental defense against the first drink. We have to have something else. This is all about our thinking. When I am in my addiction, my thinking is all about drinking. You know, when I'm not drinking, I'm thinking about drinking, squandering away the hours when I could be more useful. This 12-step recovery program rewires my thinking, where I can have a different perception on everything in life. And, we throw the word miracles about the rooms quite a lot, but it is a miracle. And all a miracle is a change in my perception. That's it. This program has the ability to rewire our brains. That's the easiest way to put it in my mind anyway. So he appreciated the subtle insanity which precedes the first drink. Because it's not what happens whilst we're drinking, it's what happens before. It's the thought that precedes lifting that we think it's going to be okay when we know deep down it's not. But I was confident it could not happen to me after what I had learned. So you could come to big book studies for the rest of your life and learn an awful lot. But let me tell you, it ain't going to be enough to let you stop. It ain't going to be enough for you to get through inventory. It ain't going to be enough to understand what step 10 is. It ain't going to be enough to understand what step 11 is and what you have to do in your prayer and meditation. It ain't going to be enough to help you work with others. Reading this book by itself and listening to recordings like this by yourself is not going to fix it for you. You need to have a sponsor to be able to explain and take you through the masterly detail. So important. I got a message during the week from somebody to say, Mags, I don't want to be wasting your time. And, I think I'll just continue to attend the Saturday. Happy days. Attend your Saturday all you want. Knock yourself out, but it ain't going to be enough. But I'll leave that one with you. It's okay. It's entirely your decision. But I would be doing this person a disservice if I told them anything but. I have to stay true to the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. And let them know that, great, it's great that you're showing up with all of these people on a Saturday morning. So I reasoned, there you go, his little head, his intelligent mind. I reasoned, I'm just going to work this out for myself. I reasoned I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows. You might be sitting here thinking, I ain't as bad as the people on here that look as if they're hanging. I show up and put my lovely jacket on and go for a walk in the morning after the meetings. I ain't as bad as you lot. I get up and put my makeup on in the mornings. I ain't as bad as you lot. Well, set that aside, everything you think because like I said last week on the recording, I used to show up at all of these places thinking that I looked like a movie star. When in actual fact, when I took another glance at myself in the mirror, I put my makeup on as if I was bouncing on a trampoline. I mean, there's where my reality was. So I was not so far advanced as most of you fellows that I had been usually successful in licking my other personal problems and that I would therefore be successful where you men had failed. Oh, the judgment. Oh, the opinion. I'm not the same as you ladies because you don't even know who I am, what I'm capable of, where I'm from, who I hang out with. I had ideas above my station. I think I said it right at the beginning when I started this book study. My level of judgment and opinion on people in the rooms was incredible. It stopped me from getting to the solution. My intelligence stopped me from getting to the solution. I couldn't hang out with the women in the rooms here in Belfast. If you came in with a designer handbag, I couldn't stand you. I couldn't be around you. And if you came in with a fake designer handbag, I couldn't stand you. I couldn't be around you. There was no middle of the road solution. My judgment, opinion and self-knowledge was going to kill me because I was coming in and making a judgment of you, giving an opinion on you, looking and pointing at you and what I thought was your problem and where you had failed in life rather than looking at what you were pointing me towards, which was the solution to all my problems, not just this drink and drugging thing. Isn't that a miracle? That change in perception in my thinking that is now taking place. And that's not me being egoic in any way. I'm just describing what has happened. I'm just describing my experience. I had felt I had every right to be self-confident, but it would only be a matter of exercising my willpower and keeping on guard. Now that little line just sends me to the fair. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. Exercising my willpower. Oh my God. When it comes to willpower, I was the fittest on this planet because the exercise that I put into exerting my willpower was exhausting. There was no CrossFit or high rocks or Pilates class that was going to drain my energy as much as this exercise of implementing my own willpower. Exhausted by it. I had muscles the size of Ireland with exercise in my willpower. And I couldn't even lift a weight. I couldn't even carry a weight. I was a scrawny, skinny, bedraggled, hair falling out, bags around my eyes, still thinking like I looked like a Hollywood movie star. Like, give me a break. Exercising my willpower. And keeping on guard. See, this on guard thing, I describe it with my sponsees. It's the only way that I can bring it to life. Do you know in the Olympics, they have this sport that's called fencing, and there's two people attached to two little bungee cords, and they've got these little swords, these bendy swords, and they're dressed in all of this armor with this face mask that you can't see their face, and they've got these little lights all over this. It's like AI, they've got all these little lights at all of the touch points, and when the sword touches their head, the opponent gets the point or something, and they bounce about like ballerinas, and they've trained for 4 years to get this gold medal. And all they're doing with each other is keeping on guard so that the other person doesn't get the point. On guard, on guard, on guard, bouncing about and dancing. They're exercising like Billy-O to get this gold medal. Keeping on guard, trying to shield themselves. That's exactly what I did with alcohol and drugs. I tried to keep on guard. I tried to keep the shield. I danced about Belfast like Michael Flatley. Do you know what I mean? Honest to God, it was crazy. Now, I'm not going to mention the big show that he was in because that would be against our traditions and Tradition 10 and bringing an outside matter into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. But you get my drift. I was up and down that stage like nobody's business, trying to keep on guard. Exhausted by it. I'm not going to go to that bar because they'll be there. I'm not going to go to that hotel because they don't serve that wine and it's too strong. I'm not going to hang out with that person because I know that they can go and get me some other stuff. I'm not going to sit with my family because they don't drink enough and they certainly don't use, so I'm not going to be around them. On guard all my life. Trying to walk into your room and read the room to see if I'm going to be safe or not. Can I get out of here quickly? Can I get more drink? Can I get access to anything else? Do you know what I mean? Keeping on guard. Do you remember those days, people? And if you're listening to this or you're thinking that you can work this out by yourself, you're going to be exhausted by the end of this. Trying to do this and fix this by yourself and work it all out through your self-knowledge. Time to put the shield down. You have no defense of yourself. Time to put the sword down. Because like it says in Bill's story, it will turn on you like a boomerang and rip you to shreds. It's time to put it down. It's time to get the help. It's time to let in the idea and admit that you are powerless physically and mentally. It's time to admit that your life is unmanageable and that you cannot do this by yourself. It's time. But if you're not convinced and if you're still not moved by the evidence, let's talk a little bit more about it. In this frame of mind, in his mind, because this centers in our mind, like it says at the beginning of step 1, the elimination of our alcohol was but the beginning. This centers in our mind. This is all about our thinking. I went about my business and for a time all was well. Yeah, like the guy with the carpet slippers for 25 years, it might be okay. It might be okay for 3 months right now. You might be sitting here 4 days and you're feeling great, happy days, because you had no trouble refusing drinks and began to wonder if you'd not been making too hard work of a simple matter. The reality of it is you're making more hard work of it. And I can talk from bitter experience. I made more hard work of it doing it by myself. The easier, softer way is to do the 12 steps and have a spiritual awakening with your sponsor. That is the easier, softer way. So what did he do? One day I went to Washington to present to some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I'd been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. He was going about his business. Happy days. No alcohol, no drugs, no nothing. He was doing great. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased, and I knew my partners would too. It was the end of a perfect day. Not a cloud on the horizon. Not a cloud on the horizon. Everything's perfect. And this is why I have to emphasize here that when we say, you need to find out the reason why you drank. We drank because of what it says in the doctor's opinion. We liked the effect it had on us. We wanted the sense of ease and comfort. That's the reason why we drank. There are no triggers as to why, as an alcoholic, I drink. There are no triggers. It was the end of a perfect day, and I still picked up. There are no triggers. If you be an alcoholic and have the physical allergy and the mental obsession, you're going to pick up no matter what without the mental defense against the first drink. We can drink in anger, depression, guilt, shame, remorse, like it said in our session last week, or the like. I have to watch when I'm jubilation, congratulations, and I'm happy. I drink no matter what. There is no trigger. There was no trigger for me in my life. I would have used that as an insanely trivial excuse to pick up. But it's taken me to go through this program to realize the self-deception that I had, justifying a deliberate reason to have a drink. No, Max, get over yourself. You're a lying, dishonest, deceitful individual, and you need to get that sorted. You're not fooling anybody on this planet but yourself, and you're not even fooling yourself because you know you need to do something about this. Do you see how this works? There's no getting away from this. And we're going to learn more about that as we go through the last of the next couple of weeks. So what did he do? He went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. Notice the italics, important. They're raising something here that they want us to tune into. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to mind, just the thought came to mind that it would be nice to have a couple of drinks with dinner. That was all. Nothing more. Now there's two things in this. The thought came to my mind to have a couple of cocktails. That was all. Nothing more. So the thought was, I'll have a couple of cocktails. Nothing more. But the reality of it is, when you dig down to what we're talking about here in this mental obsession, all that he's talking about was the thought came to mind. That was all. Nothing more. There was no trials. There was no tribulations. There was no triggers. It was the end of a perfect day. So nothing else was going to come to mind. All that came to mind was the thought of a drink. That was all. Nothing more was needed for him than to have that thought that he needed a drink. He didn't need a terrible situation to happen. He didn't need an additional thing to take place for him to have the thought about the drink. That just came and he was like, all right, a couple will do me. And in that moment, there was no mental defense against the first drink. He hadn't even thought about what the consequences would be of picking up that first drink. And that's often what happens, and this is what we're going on to talk about. So he ordered a cocktail in my meal. Of course he did. Then I ordered another cocktail. Of course he did, because when he had one, like it's described in the doctor's opinion, he set off the phenomenon of craving where he had no other option to have another one. He set the cycle off. That's the reality of the world that we live when we have this physical allergy. So if you're sitting down today and you think that you're only going to have one drink and you're going to be able to control it and that you have a choice over it and your willpower is going to work, no, it's not. I'm sorry. Well, in actual fact, I'm not sorry. Thank you. And you're welcome. I'm telling you the information that you need to hear. After dinner, I decided to take a walk. Yeah, I'll go for a dander. Sure, that'll make things happy. Go for a dander. That'll make it all walk off. Aye, a few steps. Take my watch with me. Once I get to 10,000, I'll be able to come back. And then it'll all disappear. No. Because whilst he's out for the walk, the phenomenon of craving is kicked in. What is happening? The desire for more. I need more. I need more. I need more. And here he goes on to say, when I returned to the hotel, it struck me, boom, like lightning. Out of nowhere, a highball would be fine before going to bed. So I stepped into the bar and had one. No, he didn't. I remember having several more that night and plenty more the next morning. The mental obsession, the insanity, the thinking, the crux of the problem that preceded the first drink, insanity, ended up with him now having a shadowy recollection of being in an airplane bound for New York and of finding a friendly taxi driver at the landing field instead of my wife. Is that you? How many times has that happened? You've got an appointment to go to the next day. You never made it. The driver escorted me about for several days. You see, you've set the phenomenon of craving off. No mental defense against the first drink. You need more and more and more and more. I know little of where I went or what I said and did. And then, boom. It was only ever going to last for a period of time before this happened. The hospital with unbearable mental and physical suffering. Remember, the symptoms of our alcoholism, the symptoms of the addiction, the physical allergy, the mental obsession. So he's affected in both. And here was the guy who was in real trouble because he couldn't let the idea in that he was an alcoholic, nor could he accept the spiritual help. As soon as I regained my ability to think, I went carefully over that evening in Washington, because you don't need to think about what happened during. You don't need to think about the consequences, the behaviour, the ending up in hospital and what happened after. What we have to work out is, or what we have to walk through is, the pre-meditation before we lifted. What was it? What happened? What were the steps that we didn't take? Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first drink. This time, I had not thought of the consequences at all. He didn't care. How many times have you just gone thought it? Like it says previously in More About Alcoholism. After the 6th or 7th, we're banging on the bar, saying to ourselves, it doesn't matter this time. And we try again and again and again. He goes on to explain that I had commenced to drink as carelessly as though the cocktails were ginger ale. Yeah, some trivial excuse, that little mental twist that it talks about. That little mental twist, it'll be all right if I stick more ginger ale in it. It'll be all right if I put 10 tons of ice in it. It'll dilute it all down. No, the alcohol's still there, people. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends, this is so important, this line, so important. I now remembered what my alcoholic friends had told me, how they prophesied that if I had an alcoholic mind, the time and the place would come. Not if, not but, not maybe, the time and place will come. It will come. And you will drink again. If you have got no mental defense against this first drink, if you haven't had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, you will pick up again. They had said that though I did raise a defence, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. He didn't even need a trivial reason. There was no reason. It was the end of a perfect day, but he still did it anyway. How does that even make sense? If you talk to somebody that's non-alcoholic, they won't get that. They won't understand that. And thank God they don't have to, because they're not one of us. I remember, and I've said this before in this Saturday meeting, I remember my sister standing in front of me with my niece and nephew on either side, and she was screaming in my face, "You must know, Margaret, you must know why you drink. You must know you're killing yourself. You're killing me and my family. You must know why you drank." And I shrugged my shoulders and I said, "I just don't know." At which point, that's when carnage in our family ensued because of me. Because I didn't have an answer. She didn't understand. And she doesn't have to, because she's not one of us. It's me that has to understand. It's me that has to get the solution. It's me that has to know what I'm going through. It's me that has to admit to my innermost self. Concede, like it says on page 30, I have to concede to my innermost self. Not to my sister, not to my niece and nephew, not to my mother while she's on her deathbed, to my innermost self. So the trivial excuse did happen and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. That's why I'm saying you can go to the book studies for the rest of your life, because what you've learned will not occur to you when you're sitting in front of that, whatever substance it is you're going to pick up. You're going to do it because you've got no mental defense against it. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. This illness centers in our mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help in those strange mental blank spots. That's what we have. There's no willpower and no knowledge that is ever going to keep you separated from this thing. There has to be something else. And that's when we're going to be moving into our step 2 over the course of the next couple of weeks. He goes on to say, I'd never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. Hopeless, remember, from the doctor's opinion, beyond all medical aid. No addiction service, no counsellor, no psychologist, no treatment facility, yada, yada, yada. No medical intervention is going to be enough for us. They can give us a good foundation, but we still have to do this. I knew then it was a crushing blow. Poor Fred. Poor Fred. It was a crushing blow to his pride. All he's talking about here is what he thinks other people are going to think of him. It was a crushing blow to his pride. The reason for me in my life as well, and my bitter experience, that I couldn't let the idea in that I was an alcoholic was because I was concerned about what I thought you would think of me. That's what prevented me, plus the knowledge, plus the intelligence, plus my strength of willpower, all of those little things, the aggregate of all of that stuff added together wouldn't let me let the idea in. I had to be beat into reasonableness by drugs and alcohol before I could accept this spiritual help to a near-death experience. That's how far this insidious addiction can take us to. And it will. Our illness wants us extinct. Our illness wants us dead. Our illness doesn't care. But we do. Hence the reason why we do what we do. Hence the reason why we give this away. Hence the reason why we tell the truth and only use the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, because it's the only place you'll find the truth of what you suffer from and how you can overcome it. This next paragraph, the perfect example of a 12-step call and how this operates. More detail is available and more working with others, and we'll get to that point when we get to that point. But this is an excellent example of a 12-step call when 2 members go to help the newcomer. So 2 members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me, I love this line. They grinned, which I didn't like so much. That happens all the time. You know, the girl that phones me and who had gone off with her boyfriend and the flowers and the perfume and the lovely restaurants and the job promotion and all of that. And, you know, she calls or she pops round and she says, oh, Max, it's happened again. I just grin. Not in a way that is not in a way that is sarcasm or I told you so. Never in that way. Never, ever, ever in that way. I smile. I grin because I'm like, yeah, textbook. Your textbook. You're Fred. And they never ever like the little smile. Because then they go, I know, you've been telling me this all along. And I'm like, yeah, great. Let's get started. What do we need to do? I never liked it when it happened with me, with my sponsor. I always used to answer him back and say, well, what are you laughing at? I'm not laughing. I'm not laughing. And he would just say, you're welcome. And that would really wind me up. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself an alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. Think about that. But I was an alcoholic, setting aside every single thing you think you know about your illness, about the steps, about the program, to have a new experience with God. Do you think you're one of us? And do you think you're really licked this time? And here's the thing. The change in his perception, the change in his mind. When we set aside every single thing we think we know, I had to concede on both propositions. That he was an alcoholic and he couldn't do this by himself. And here's how they do this stuff. This is the importance of that 12-step interaction with the newcomer. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition beyond medical aid. They talked about the allergy. They talked about the mental obsession. They didn't talk about the isms, the isms, the isms. They didn't talk about the I, self, me. They didn't talk about just keep coming back. They didn't just talk about one day at a time. They didn't talk about the fact that they fight alcohol one day at a time. They didn't talk about put the plug in the jug. They didn't talk about 90 meetings in 90 days. They talked about the effect that alcohol had on them physically and mentally and what they did about it. This process of having this conversation snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. Yeah. I don't know, sometimes, I don't know why I'm going to talk about this, but I'm going to share it anyway. There's a little candle that I always have burning behind me in the background here for every meeting, for every single sponsorship session. Since I got out of rehab, that candle is always burning when I'm in a meeting of the fellowship. And when I go to bed at night, this sounds so cheesy, but I don't really care what you think of me when I'm talking about this, because this is how my rodeo works and this is my life. Each night when I end my sessions with my sponsees or any meeting or any speaker commitment, whatever service it is in Alcoholics Anonymous or Cocaine Anonymous, I blow that little candle out because it reminds me that this process of being of service constantly for the rest of my life, when I blow out that little candle, it shows me that this is the last flicker of conviction that I can do this job by myself. And I go to bed knowing that the service that we're doing all through the day is what is going to enable me to keep on going and keep on going and keep on going. I snuff that candle out every single night and let that blooming smoke rise into the universe to help somebody else. God, keep on helping me do this. God, keep on presenting me with these people. God, help give me the strength, the power, the direction, the love, so that people may bear witness to thy love, thy power, thy way of life. Because I cannot do this by myself. Keep on giving me the energy to do this, please. That's what this is all about. And like it's time to put down the sword, and like it's time to put down the shield, blow out that flicker of conviction that you can do this by yourself, because you can't. This next paragraph is powerful. In that 12-step call, they then outline the spiritual answer. They're giving us the little taster as we move into step 2. They outline the spiritual answer and program of action. It's both, which 100 of them had followed successfully. And though I had been only a nominal churchman, the proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. Of course they're not. They're not intellectually hard to swallow. We're all intelligent people. We know all that. They're not hard to swallow. But the program of action, a couple of lines, twice, they've said, but the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. This might feel pretty drastic, some of the stuff that we're talking about here. It might sound sensible as well, or maybe less sensible and more drastic, but that's okay. Because we will take your hand and place it in the hand of the God of your own understanding. We'll place it into the sponsor in the first instance. We'll help you understand what you have got, the physical allergy, the mental obsession, and then we'll just keep turning the pages. We keep on turning the pages and letting the book do the work. We keep on turning the pages and having faith in the process. Right now, you don't have to have a faith in God in step 1. You don't have faith in the process. Set aside every single thing you think you know about the God of your understanding and everybody else is in the room. Set it all aside, because this is what it means. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. Yes, that's what you're going to do, but you're going to have help doing that. That's not easy. It's not easy. But the moment I made up my mind, this is Fred's story. It's my story. The moment I made up my mind to go through with this process, to do nothing else other than have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, get this, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be. It was taken away. The moment I made up my mind to go through with this process, to keep showing up, to keep on turning the pages, to keep on doing the work, to keep on taking the action, I'm telling you, something shifted dramatically. There was a transformation, a psychic change, a personality change, all of what it was promised in this book. Every single part of it has happened. Textbook. And it will happen to you. And I am telling you what my sponsor told me. It is a cast iron guarantee that it will be removed. And it will never return. If you do this work. If you do this work, it works. And if you don't, it won't. That's how simple it is. And notice that, just as a reminder, those words are not the first time we've heard those words. In Bill's story on page 14, he talks about the same thing. This is the thread that runs through the book, the golden thread that runs through the book about, and this is why we have to continually be reminded. Page 14, these were revolutionary and drastic proposals. There's that word again. But the moment I fully accepted them, the effect was electric. There was a sense of victory followed by such a peace and serenity as I had never known. That's what happened with me. There was an utter confidence. I felt lifted up as though the great clean wind of a mountaintop blew through and through. God comes to most men gradually, but his impact on me was sudden and profound. So see the thread that runs right the way through? Bill's experience is the same as Fred's experience, is the same as my experience, is the same as many, many people that are nodding their head on this screen as I look at it. We're all having the same experience with regards to this transformation when we do this work. It's as simple as that. And your transformation might not be sudden and profound. It might be the slow educational variety like it talks about in the spiritual experience at the back of the book, page 547. That's okay. 567, sorry, 567, 5678, like the Steps song. Sorry, little caveat, 567, 5678. Sorry for mentioning that group. That was not a good thing to do in line with Tradition 10 and Outside Matter. Anyway, there we go. Just before the AA or CA traditions, please come in and take me down. I have to ground myself. Thank you very much. Anyway. And thanks for the thumbs up, Laws, and keeping me right. It then goes on to say, quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems. Again, a repeat from page 13 in Bill's story, solve all my problems. My drink problem hasn't only been solved. My pride problem, my self-esteem problem, my work problems, my relationship problems, my money problems, any problems. I don't actually have any problems, people. I do not have any problems. Because whilst I'm sitting doing all of this stuff with you, God's all around sorting all those problems out. So I feel as if I'm waiting on things getting sorted out. I ain't waiting because God's still working. That's what happens. I have since been brought into a way of life, 100% a way of living, where I don't fight alcohol one day at a time. I live my life one day at a time, a way of living that is infinitely more satisfying and, I hope, more useful than the life I lived before. 100% that's what happens. My old manner of living was by no means a bad one. It wasn't. My life wasn't by any means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. No, thank you, sir. No, no, no. I would not go back to that life even if I could. But I can't because it's been taken away. I can't go back to that life. The removal of the alcohol for me is so strong. I recoil from it, like it says later on. I recoil from it. I'm not affected by it in any way, shape or form. And he goes on to summarise, Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him, like you, like me. He had felt only the first nip of the ringer, like it says on page 38. You might only be feeling the first nip of the ringer, but remember, like it says at the beginning of the chapter, it gets worse, never better. After every relapse, it gets worse, never better. You will get to the point of pitiful and incomprehensible demoralisation, like it says on page 30. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled. Yeah, I did, nearly dead, before they really commenced to solve their problems. We then hear from another doctor, a doctor called Dr. Percy Polyak, P-O-L-I-A-C-K. He's from Bellevue Hospital in New York, so a different doctor from Dr. Silkworth, who was in Towns Hospital. Here's his scenario, his synopsis of it all. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a world-renowned hospital, recently made this statement to us. This is so powerful. What you say about the general hopelessness beyond medical aid of the average alcoholic's plight is, in my opinion, correct. He's saying, yeah, these are all beyond medical aid. Another medical person, expert that works with us is saying he can't help. As to two of you men whose stories I have heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless. I can't help you, apart from divine help. Divine meaning relating to or coming from God. He is reiterating what Dr. Silkworth has said. He's reiterating what Carl Jung said on page 27. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you. There you go. Sorry. No room at the inn. You can't come in. If I had been able to avoid it. But he didn't avoid it. He took it in and tried the best he could and then handed this to Alcoholics Anonymous and these two members. People like you are too heartbreaking. Yeah, we are. We are heartbreaking to those about us that are trying to help us that can't. It is heartbreaking for people to witness our demise. Heartbreaking. And all the while we're dying inside also. That's the thing. Everybody's affected by this. And though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution. They are smashing home the idea there is no other solution. Spiritual, not religious. This is a spiritual program. And this paragraph, again, once more. They've already said it on page 30. Smash home. They've already said it on 39 another time. Once more, they're reminding us before we move into the second half of the first step that the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink. No mental defense against the first drink. That is the crux of your problem, of picking up, of using whatever you're using. And except in a few rare cases, neither he nor any other human being can provide such defense. No other human being. His defense must come from a higher power. It must come. Who says there's no musts in AA? Yeah, there are. There's one right there. There's 52 of them, in fact. Must come from a higher power. No if, no but, no maybe. They've emphasized it on 30. They've emphasized it on 39. Smashed home the idea we can't do this by ourselves. It must come from a power greater than ourselves. And when we move into chapter 2 or chapter 4 next week, I'll explain more about that. Happy Saturday, everybody.